All right, we are live, my friend. We're not live, we're recording. But I always like to start the show off with a little joke that I stole from someone else. You ready?
Okay, I'm ready. Hit me
Here it
with your
is.
best shot.
Well, my best. It'll do until my best gets here. Okay,
Okay.
so there was a man and his wife. They were having a bit of a fight in their marriage. And so they were giving each other, silent treatment. And so the man had to get up and catch a flight the next morning. And so, not wanting to break the silent treatment, he wrote a note to his wife, "Wake me up at 5." Right. And so, next morning, he wakes up at 8 o'clock and he looks over at the nightstand, and his wife had left a note saying, "Hey, it's 5. Wake up."
I think I've had that argument once before. Okay,
I,
three marriages, and so I kind of remember something that went down similar to that.
I got you. Let's go ahead and start the show then. All right. Welcome back to the Urban Academia Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Zilla, as per usual. And if you join me right over here, we got a special guest in the building. Please introduce yourself, sir.
Well, I'm Byron C. Saunders. I live in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I am an arts management consultant, actor, director, producer, dramaturge, historian, and a civil rights activist. So I'm very happy to be here and being a part of this opportunity to share a story or a couple of stories about life, the pursuit of happiness and freedom. So let's go at it.
Awesome, man. That's a lot of different titles there. If you had to choose one, I'm just going off the cuff here.
Yes.
One are you eliminating? Or no, matter of fact, you can only keep one of those titles. What is your passion and why?
Civil rights activists. The road to freedom starts with an understanding of what that really means. My family is rich in that area. See, I'm a son of a HBCU graduate. My dad graduated from Tennessee State University. And at one time, he was the National Alumni Association president, which gave me access to a lot of the history of Tennessee State University. My mother was a graduate of Fisk University, and she was summa cum laude. She was an AKA. Constance Motley was her soror, and Constance Motley Baker, another civil rights well-known lawyer and attorney. And then my mother's mother was a graduate of Fisk University. She was in the same class with W.E.B. Du Bois, and she was also a Fisk Jubilee singer. But more importantly, with connection to my root and my passion for freedom, is that my grandmother's first cousin was the first and seventh president of Liberia, Joseph Jenkins Roberts. So in my family tree is about liberation, about freedom, the pursuit of freedom. And so, if anything that I've ever done in my commitment to my people and my entire life has been about that pursuit of freedom, getting to freedom land and helping my people attain that. So, everything else that I do with respect to all the other hats that I've worn along the way has always been committed to that singular factor in my life, and that is making sure that I, as a leader in the industry, to lead people to freedom and to freedom land, especially my African American brothers and sisters and those of the diaspora in our country.
Ooh, boy, that's a strong family tree. We could have a
Yes.
whole show just going through that and the many, what they call them, the degrees of separation,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
There is the notion of excellence and the pursuit of excellence is part of my family's history. Having just shared that with you, my sister, my oldest sister, Tony Cook, who was in from lived in Oakland, California. You may remember the Ebonics issue. Well, my sister wrote the legislation because she was on the Board of Education for the Oakland Board of Education, and she was the national spokesperson
Hmm.
for that entire issue. Very, very a powerful person herself. She was a White House fellow and worked with the Jimmy Carter campaign. And then my sister, that's right up underneath me, my sister Leslie, was Girl Scouts, worked with Girl Scouts USA, and she helped to co-design the new logo that's being used by Girl Scouts
Hmm.
right now. And in 2005, she was nominated as one of 2,000 women from around the world for a Nobel Peace Prize. And then my youngest of sisters, who's no longer with us, God rest her soul,
Hmm.
uh, was in her own right an artist, and she helped to find Usher as well as TLC because she worked with Curtis Mayfield, Kurt Tom Records in Atlanta, as
Wow.
the A&R department. And
Hmm.
so, rich in pursuit of excellence. That's what my family has been about. And I'm still a work in progress as I continue to learn more about life. And absolutely, my commitment to freedom is to make sure that each and everything that I am involved with uh, hallmark to that legacy.
I see. So okay, throughout history, because I'm a lover of history and I'm a nerd and like to look at how things connect, even though I get those connections wrong often. That's part of the fun for me. Looking at the Joe Kennedys of the world and the Rockefellers and the like, someone came along in their family and had a vision to utilize their family and start to think about themselves as assets. As far as, okay, like Joe Kennedy, for instance, I want to make as much money as possible so my
Mhm.
children don't have to do work that they don't want to do or find meaningful or have a passion for. I want them to focus on civil service and shaping this great nation of ours. And so he did it. I mean, and the rest is history. Same thing with the Bushes and the like. So I'm wondering, what is that ingredient that comes with a matriarch or a patriarch or
Mhm.
a combination of both? Like, where did this start in your family?
Education, the pursuit of their excellence in education, making sure that my father and mother making sure that we got a great education. And as they said, I think it's in every parent's handbook, doesn't matter what you be. You could be the president of the United States, or you could be just a garbage collector. But if you're going to be either, be the best, be the Da Vinci of garbage collection, be the Beethoven of whatever it is that you want to pursue. And I think when you give that to your children and you watch them as guides and role models, then you want to be like them. And as I told my both of my sons, who are very now they're 28 and about to be 26, I said, whatever you do in life, pursue what the best to be the best that you can be. And as I told them, I said, if I knew what you knew and now know at your age, I can just tell you, you will excel way past my own expectations as well as yours, and be even better than I have been. So, with each of those families, it's kind of interesting with the Kennedy family. You see as you use Joe Kennedy as an example, and Daddy Bush. With Joe Kennedy in mind, I grew up in Washington, D.C. So I was there for those Camelot days. I remember the day that JFK was assassinated. I was at a Catholic elementary school, and it was my turn and another young student, our turn to go out and lower the flag. Uh, and when we came back in, all the nuns and all the students were crying. And
Oh,
it was a moment when we just realized when they shared that with us that he was tragically assassinated in Texas. And then when he was laying in state at the Capitol, my mother and father took me and my family down to the Capitol to view the body. And then you know that iconic picture of little Caroline and John Kennedy Jr. walking behind the
The casket.
casket
Mhm.
on Constitution Avenue. I saw that in real time. I was there. Fast forward, Bobby Kennedy, when he was killed tragically by Sirhan Sirhan in California in the hotel. 2 weeks before that, my father and another neighbor of mine had put up $5,000 to have him visit our community in Washington, D.C. on his campaign. I actually had a chance to be in his presence, shake his hand. And it was like devastating. Martin Luther King assassinated, 1968, April. I was in my high school, and that night before, because my parents, who would invite civil rights Jewish people over to our house, Muslims, Nation of Islam, having conversations about civil rights. And you have to know in Washington, D.C., everything is government. There is no manufacturing companies in D.C.,
Right.
everything is government. And so having had those conversations, being a part of the civil rights movement, going, being a, when my dad and mother went down, my dad went to the March on Washington. Imagine, I'm 13 years old, and I have aunts and uncles coming from around the country who are either staying at our house or staying with relatives to go down to the march. My dad said to me
Mm.
on that day, he said, "Son, I know you want to be with me. However, if anything should happen to me and your aunts and uncles, you will be the man of this family. I need for you to stay home and protect your mom and your sisters." Well, my mom and my sisters, because we lived a mile from US Route 1, Rhode Island Avenue,
Mhm.
walked from our house up to Route 1 and watched the people coming down in buses, mule train, skates, walking, bicycles. So that was my bar mitzvah, as they would say in the Jewish experience, because that's the day I became a man. So that moment
Mm.
was my beginning of my own journey, so that when I was in 68, when Martin Luther King was assassinated, I was part of the Black Student Union movement at my high school. I got a chance to meet Stokely Carmichael and H. Rap Brown and be a part of that movement as a student. And my commitment was given to me. It was like an anointing. It said, whatever I would do in my life, I would make my pledge to God and to my people to always do whatever it is that I was going to do with my life would be towards freedom and for my people's freedom. And so that's been part of my journey. I've given it to my sons as part of their journey. And so I understand that Howard Joe Kennedy passing that down. And then
Right.
unfortunately, what we see now in Bobby Jr., who's been damaged by probably some of the same tragedies and trauma, but has taken a turn where he is not really qualified to be anything, to run anything in our federal government, as is most of the other people in this current administration. They're not qualified. You have to have a commitment to have passion in your life. There are 6 core principles for being a good leader. You have to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, shelter the homeless,
Mhm.
heal the sick, give hope to the hopeless, and protect the planet that we live on. Now, if those 6 things are not part of your agenda as a leader, you're nothing more than a pimp or a gangster or a thug, because you're failing to lead people in the direction that they need the most help. We don't need a wall separating our country or our communities. We don't need armament and weaponry. Some of the, how many more times can you blow up the world? But what we do need is leadership, leaders who care passionately for the human existence. And unfortunately, where we are right now is because we see a lot of false leaders who have no passion for the human experience, only for themselves. They're greedy, self absorbed
Mhm.
narcissists.
I love doing a thing on our show It's usually I'm doing this show with Chulo Rich, who's out today. Um, we call it the coin toss. So flip that argument, and I want to see if you can cobble together some sort of, use your best author skills to argue for this administration and what they're doing. Can you crawl into their mindset and see, like, if we're just going to pretend make believe here, because I do believe that's what it would be. If President Trump was actually, I don't know, being truthful and honest with what he wants to do, which is, he says, to build the country up, what could you cobble together to make an argument for that sentiment? It's a little fun game I like to play.
Well, unfortunately for the fun game, I can't think of a single thing. I'm just have to be honest, because the primary challenges for an individual that has broken all 10 commandments, convicted of 34 counts of fraud, sexual predator. I mean, at some point, and here's the major question: if indeed he were true to his so-called Judeo-Christian ethics, which he has none, on the day of his inauguration, he was to put his hand on the Bible, take an oath to serve and protect the Constitution of the United States. The thing he did not do, he did not put his hand on that Bible. So at what point, if you are so-called Christian, and that is part of your process,
right?
Then he failed. Now, is he actually the sworn-in president, or did he just take that moment to make himself president because he neither put his hand on his Bible, for which his wife was holding, and there are questions about her own moral compass, which we won't have to get into, because she has a background that is also lurid as well as his. So at the point at which, if you're going to be a leader, and as I said, I got to go back to those 6 core principles. I don't care what your politics are, because those 6 things are more important right now. What about the fires in California? What about the jet that just went down in Philadelphia? What about the people who lost their lives in the Potomac River going into Reagan Airport and has no passion for either or none of that, and then wants to be the leader of the free world? So I'm going to challenge your coin flip, because on the flip side of all of that is I'm trying my best to understand why 74 million people who wanted to vote for a racist, white supremacist, and then think that he had a mandate that was so overwhelming, for which he's already lied to us within the first 2 weeks of his administration. Not to mention, how many lies did he tell in his previous 4 years? Over 30,000 lies. You see, at some point, we have to begin then to question the content of his character, because you cannot be the moral leader of the world if the content of your character is in that damaged state. So I'm not a fan. I will never be a fan. And at this point, he is trying to undo all of the rights that we have gained. He doesn't want us to have Martin Luther King's birthday. He doesn't want us to celebrate Juneteenth. He doesn't want us to talk about the issues that are necessary to bridge the gap between the races, bringing us to the table of fellowship and communion. And I don't want to sit down at his table. There's nothing he can give to me that he's already outdone himself, showing me he's vile, he has no conscience, and he has no morals. So I will yield to the game that I flip the coin, and on both sides of the coin, you can't have a 2-headed side coin that then say one side is better than the other. Okay. All right.
So, and here's the trick that we used to do. I've never had somebody just completely destroy the game.
Like, well, I get. See, listen, I understand the game. I really do, because see, in the acting class, we call that a contrapuntal argument, where we sit down together and we have, let's take a husband and wife in the joke that you just told,
Right.
that they have two opinions. Okay. Now, at some point if we were doing an acting class, the acting coach would say, "All right, you're A and you're B. Now go at it. You got a confrontation." And in the middle of the confrontation, the acting coach says, "Now switch," where you defend each other's argument. There is
That's
no
the idea.
defense of there's no defense of
Right.
the defenseless. See, the truth has no variations. Lies have lots of variations. Truth, my dad used to say, there are three sides to every story: your side, my side, and the truth. So, but truth is a matter of being able to understand that there is only one truth. And if you adhere to that, then you can understand that when you tell that lie, then it just continues. And it was another game we would play in acting class. Okay, I'm going to whisper something in your ear. And then you go turn to the next person and whisper what you heard. And then it keeps going around. So by the time it gets back to you, it's the telephone game. So by the time it gets back to you, it's like, that's not what I said.
Okay, real quick, give me the 6 core principles again. But hang on, I want to get a single shot of you doing this because it's so important to understand what's at the core of you. Yeah. So give me the 6 core principles.
Okay, the 6 core principles of being a good leader is to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, shelter the homeless, heal the sick, give hope to the hopeless, and protect the planet that we live on. Those 6 core principles will make you or break you as a leader. And if that's not at the top of your list of leadership qualities, then you don't deserve to be a leader because you're not serving the people that you're leading.
That's beautifully put. And I do want to keep in mind, what did you call the A and B switch?
Contrapuntal argument.
Counter, my goodness,
yes, it's a big word. It's a polysyllable word, but in other words, it's like you're taking one person's side and then in a conversation of getting together to try to understand. But see, you have to listen. You have to listen to each other, even to when the coach says switch. Then you have to be able to defend what the other person was defending against you. But you have to hear and listen. And so often in our lives, and right now, so many people are so confrontational, whether it's in the square ring, on the football field, or just talking to each other. They're not listening to each other. They come in with a predetermined opinion.
Would you consider yourself? Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Would you consider yourself, let's say, a foodie?
A foodie? Oh, I love food. I love to cook. My goodness.
Number one, like the thing that someone's coming over and you want to impress them.
Okay.
What's your go-to?
Well, if I do soul food, I'm gonna fix my grandmother's cornbread. I'm gonna fix some pinto beans. I'm gonna fry some chicken or bake some chicken. I like collard greens. I like soul food. I like catfish. I mean, I'm a foodie. There's pretty much nothing that I don't. Oh, there is one thing I won't fix: calf's brain. I will not fix calf's brain with eggs. That's a delicacy in some areas, but I will eat chitlins. But you got to know how to fix a chitlin. I can say this as part of because as in the chitterlings, my dad used to call them wrinkled steaks. Okay, but when you're preparing chitterlings, you have to truly take the chit out of the chitterlings. Otherwise, you know what you're eating. Okay,
that's right. That's right.
So you clean that up, so you can make it palatable for those who are culinary experts. They would understand just what I said.
So the ideal of flipping the coin.
Yes.
Right. Because people like to believe that there are two sides of the coin, but it truly depends on how you define side.
Yeah.
Right. Because they're not truly flat, but you can say two flat sides. But technically, every sort of ridge and that little ring in the middle there could be a third side. And I mean, you can go on and on depending on how you want to use your imagination to stretch it.
true.
You talked about that the counter argument, right?
Yes.
You talk about the telephone game,
Yes.
and you knowing those things, still have to ask the question: how does someone vote for President Trump?
Well, yeah. You still have you must give the other person an opportunity to share their opinion, and
Right,
then if it's worthy of being challenged, where you're
mhm,
not going to engage in an argument, then you have to
right,
prove to the person who wants to share that side of the coin to say,
right,
well, what has he done to validate
mhm,
that experience for you? Because I think at the 74 million people that voted for him, you are what you eat. If you want to go
mm,
back to the food thing, they may deny the fact that they're racist, but you voted for a white supremacist and a racist, avowed that you can't be a defender of that position and then say what he is doing, whether it's policy or signing an executive order. In the first 2 weeks of his second administration, he's already violated the demands for being a unifier, because he's not unifying any of us. And those 74 million people who voted for him, I have no, I have no, uh, uh, I have no confidence that you really do understand that if you're part of the United States, that you must understand as there is a document that is guiding our principles of democracy. In it, there's a clause in the Constitution that talks about treason. It also talks about insurrection, but at the point at which, if indeed he instigated insurrection to commit treason, then you just don't charge him with insurrection. You must charge him and the 147 people who aided and abetted the overthrow of our government. Now, I went to a military high school, U.S. Army. I was taught when you fail in a overthrow of a government, the crime you committed was treason, not an insurrection. And those who aided and abetted him are still committing that act. So our failure in this particular juncture of our political process in our country is that they failed to charge him with the right criminal charge, failed to charge the 147 members who took an oath to serve and protect the Constitution. They failed to do that as Republicans and those who co-signed on trying to overthrow the government by claiming that it was their right of being a political operative to challenge the Constitution. There's a way to do that. You don't invite people who come into that austere space. I was there, Jay Zilla. I was in DC. I'm a citizen of the nation's capital. I watched it on TV. I experienced it firsthand because my brother in law, who was a retired Capitol Police, in Profiles of Courage, while the orange guy was sitting in behind his desk and took 3 hours to get the National Guard to come into the city, which the 14th Street Bridge has closed all day long so they can make that entrance just like that. My brother-in-law took out his cell phone and called some of the officers who were at the Capitol to make sure that they were okay. Now, you will never hear that story. You will never read that story in any paper, newspaper, book. No talking head will ever tell you that story. But that's my personal witness to what went down. And I am offended that this individual allowed the Confederate flag to be posted in the rotunda of my capital. We won the Civil War. That was a contract with African Americans for us as freedom. Now you go back to my story that I told you about my tree, and then you will understand my offense and offended by that individual because he didn't care about my rights. He didn't care about me as a citizen. So what you saw on TV was second-hand information. Being there is first-hand information. Just like I told you a story about watching JFK go by in that casket. I was there. That was my experience, shaking Bobby Kennedy's hand. So when I went to Atlanta to invited by Elizabeth Omalami, Hosea Williams, who was one of Martin's 12 associates, to help start a theater with SCLC. Once again, my involvement is first person. So being in a protest march, singing civil rights songs, knowing Martin's family as personal friends, knowing Andy Young as a personal friend, John Lewis as a personal friend. How can I then turn my back on the movement when my rights are being subjected in the manner in which they are right now? So we are at war. We have to understand we are not playing a game. If you really want to go back to the 60s, go right ahead, be my guest. I have no intention of wanting to see or experience that like I did back then. See, that's the disconnect that some of our people have right now because they have no concept of how that all went down because they're not learning it in school. You're banning books, you're banning civil rights, you're banning Martin Luther King birthday. You see, you cannot keep connecting those things and then making me realize that you're not attacking me. So I take it personally, professionally, educationally, spiritually, socially. I take it all. And don't tell me it's all, I'm just saying it's always a race thing. You're right. It is a race thing because it's personal. So
look, all the leaves, right? I love that.
all of them. Check
okay.
this box, right?
right. So here are a few things.
Yes.
Because who was it? Eleanor Roosevelt. I think I talked about this last week on the show.
Yeah.
She is credited for the quote, "Great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, small minds discuss people." I believe you to be a great mind.
I'm a work in progress.
Here's the concept. Yeah.
Okay.
Where you are now far surpasses where I am. So I have to elevate you so I have a good aim.
Yes,
right?
Sir. Yes, sir.
The things that I'm working on. Biblical algebra. So if this thing over here is true in the Bible, A, and this thing over here is true in the Bible, B, then that means this thing over here, C, is also true. Okay? You get the appropriate arithmetic with your spiritual goggles. Not looking at it as a human, but looking like zooming way, way out in past the cosmos, like, where it's unimaginable.
Yes.
And look at it with your spiritual goggles according to that biblical algebra. And that I do believe will lead to universal truth.
Amen.
So you got the heads and the tails of the coin, that little piece in between, that little scratched out figure of a head and the tail, it's just something that's scratched on the surface of the actual thing. Right? Whether it's the silver, the nickel, the copper, whatever. Right?
Yes.
So that's what I want to zero in on.
Okay.
You had a very interesting question when you say, how could they vote for such a man? Right? To me, when I zoom out, it's like, well, why do people eat McDonald's? Why do people still smoke cigarettes?
Yeah.
It's advertisement. It's marketing.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
It's something that you feel that some commercial comes on to, verify what you feel. And then everything else kind of goes out the window. Oftentimes people don't remember what you tell them. They remember how you made them feel.
Right.
I feel left behind. I feel the people in power don't represent me and don't care about what I need personally to try to achieve that American dream. Right? Then along comes the spider and says, you know what? You should feel that way. And it's not your fault. It's their fault. The They did it to you.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, let's just forget everything he's done. Let's forget all the counts. Let's forget every horrible thing he's tried to do, every horrible thing he's done and said, because that guy is sticking it to these people that I hate because of how I remember them making me feel. So if you understand all of that, I'm saying to my audience, now you can understand why just looking at a Hillary Clinton, who's a lawyer, brilliant, she was the most qualified person to go for the office of president ever, just by virtue of where she was, just by virtue of her experience in different forms of high-level administrative government, right? But for them, I can't ever be Hillary Clinton. I'm never going to get into a good school and become a lawyer and have those positions. But Trump, I can hit the lotto and be Trump tomorrow. And he eats fried chicken. I like fried chicken. He eats chicken nuggets and hamburgers. Me too. He says what he feels, and I like that. You see what I'm saying? How he makes them feel. That will throw out a lot of the truth that you're talking about and the universal truth that I'm seeking.
Okay.
So that's where I like to start.
So let me ask you a question based on what you just said.
Absolutely.
So Constitution change. They reverse the 14th Amendment. You as a African American, being a good believing in democracy, have just acquiesced to somebody putting you back into the box of oppression and suppression. Do you go along with that because you feel as if democratically the vote was that they were voted to revoke it just because they don't like it? Or do you commit to the ideal of a fair and equal practice? Now, see, the challenge is, yeah, if he made you feel as if he's on your side, but then when you begin to talk about the policies and the procedures for which will validate that, making you feel better because you think it's against you. However, then you start taking away the health care, you start taking away the SNAP. SNAP, in most cases, the ability to feed your family. Do you know that statistically, most white people are on SNAP? Most white people get the benefits of everything governmental, even affirmative action. So at some point, you are either believing in the ideal or you are perverting the ideal because you're thinking that you're the one being oppressed when all of the information that's out there that can validate, no, you're not the one getting oppressed. In fact, you're getting most of all of the benefits. So you're now going to take the little bit of piece of that pie that you're going to give to those who are in most need, and you're going to take that away from them. And that's because you want to be feeling good about getting that little piece that they had to be given back to you, which you're already getting most of it. So it's about information. It's about not so much as being finding that you feel good because somebody's taking your side. See, we are placed, we as African Americans and people of color in this country are in a very precarious zone all the time. And the reason why I can say that as a historian is because you go back to Appomattox. Now, when Jefferson Davis and Robert E. Lee lost, the federal government did not charge them with treason. Is that not what they did? Okay, that was part of the solution, so as not to upset that peculiar institution. Very much the same way right now. The Supreme Court gave Biden the opportunity to go rogue. He chose not to. Failure, because they could have put an end to all of this crap just like that. Why? Because of white privilege. Would not do the same thing that they did to us. How long did it take to get Nat Turner? 2 months. Hung him for committing the same crime that these same people are being charged right now because they said he was instigating to commit treason against the then United States. Don't forget, the gentleman taken off the streets of Washington, D.C., who then lived 12 years as a slave, was a freedman.
Let me ask you this.
So it's at the point at which I hear what you say, I only
Yeah.
see what you do. And by what your actions are, tell me that you're either speaking out of one side of your mouth or telling me the truth out of the other side, because at some point you cannot live in both sides of that world and then convince me that you're the one that's being oppressed when I see and hear all that you're doing to make sure that I do not achieve the same status that you have and
Right.
being given the equal. And here, let's go back to just the case of the Supreme Court. So if Joe Biden was given the authority to go after them, and Joe Biden is 80 some years old, how many more days does he have left on his ticket? So who is he thinking about? Is he thinking about himself, or is he thinking about the fact that the Supreme Court actually gave him the authority to bring the anvil down on all of this, but
Mm.
chose not to? So I blame both sides because let's remember in 1964 at the Democratic Convention when Fannie Lou Hamer was sitting there telling them about her oppression and trying to get the Mississippi Democratic delegation to admit them into the process because they were being oppressed and suppressed, and told her story. You don't remember this because I remember watching it on TV. They cut off her presentation to then have Lyndon Johnson tell us that Hubert Humphrey was going to be his vice presidential choice instead of listening to that conversation at the convention,
Hmm.
for which at that point, when right after that, Johnson passes the civil rights legislation, and Senator Stennis, Strom Thurmond, and all the rest of those who were Democrats said, if you do this, we will leave the Democratic Party. And they did. And they became the Dixiecrats. So once again, I go back to the history, and the proof is in the pudding, baby. It ain't in what you say, it's what you do. And at
And
that
this is
some
what I'm
point,
saying to
and
you.
that's that, and I
This is what I'm
and those
saying to
all do.
you.
Hold on, because I'm
Okay.
gonna come back to your other side part,
Please,
because
please.
that other side point is then being convinced that because they don't know the truth, they don't know the history. If they knew
Right.
the history, then there's no way that they could acquiesce to someone who is practicing white supremacy and racism right in front of their faces and then say, I'm with that guy because he's making sure that I get my fair share. Once again, you're not feeding the hungry. You're not clothing the naked. You're not sheltering the homeless. You're not healing the sick. You're not giving hope to the hopeless. And you are definitely not protecting the planet that we're living on. Because if you did, with all that fire that went down in California a few weeks ago, and the ocean on one side and fire right next to you. You mean to tell me you can't get that water up off of the ocean? Well, I understand that it would ruin the copper and all the other things that you've laid down that would then make your infrastructure even worse. But you didn't go to do nothing to put the fire out, and then you're going to blame it on DEI? Wait a minute. I look like I got Bobo the Clown written on my forehead? You trying to make me believe that? Come on, let's be honest now, because the other side is like buying into the BS, but really not understanding that here's the deal. Did you like going to that movie last week? Well, the studios just got shut down. Ain't going to open back up for quite some time because they depended on that space to create the magic. Okay. And guess what? The insurance company that took all the benefits away from those homeowners who didn't have fire insurance, flooding insurance, took that away from them. Guess who makes the industry that makes the movies sustain what they got to do? The underwriters from an insurance company. So now all that stuff you enjoyed going to Disney World, which is not real, you want to put people into virtual reality, Housewives or wherever, But let's be honest. Now, next week we got the Super Bowl, so they're going to go down there to do what? Not be caring of the people who from Katrina are still suffering. I spent 5 months in post-Katrina in Louisiana. I worked there. I saw it with my own eyes. But no, you're going to go down to the Super Bowl and enjoy it, but you're not thinking about those people who are living around there. You're not thinking about the state that is rated, what, 37th out of 50, with the educational system that's absolutely not teaching anybody. These are the facts. I'm not basing it on
let me stop you there. Hang on,
that's
Byron.
hyperbole. Okay.
Slow down.
We can talk about
look, we're used to doing 5-hour podcasts together. We don't have the same amount of time.
Okay.
Here's what I'm saying to you. What I'm saying to you. You're absolutely right. What you're talking about is facts, not feelings. But they are operating on feelings, not facts. And this is why the Democratic Party will continue to lose until we understand that fact. Because if the road that we traveled led us to him being overwhelmingly voted for, then of what use was the road to Democrats and people, even his own voters? I'm with you on that. That's not how you manipulate people, though. Not with facts, not these people. And this is what I'm talking about. How do you speak to people who say fake news to your facts?
Okay, I got a question for you then, based on that. Mm-hmm. Had Joe Biden taken the authority given to him by the Supreme Court and immediately arrested all 147 members who aided and abetted against the United States of America, which he had the authority to do, what do you think would have happened as a result of him doing what, given the authority by a Supreme Court, which is supposed to be an independent part of the three parts of our government, to use that authority to put everything back in the order that it was supposed to be? Why didn't he do it? And
because he cares about.
Hold on. What would?
Oh, I thought you were asking.
No, I'm asking a question. What would have happened had he done that, as opposed to what he did do, which was paramount to nothing?
It would have been the same thing that happened everywhere else. We used the courts against these people. It was used as fuel for the flames for that base. Because you can lock up those men, and even from prison, they could have been like, keep fighting. This is what they're doing to us. And then Trump still wins.
No.
And then he pardons all of them. He's shown himself to have
Trump
done.
Would not have been allowed to run, because in the Constitution, it says specifically, violation of the act of treason is to never be able to run for any office politically in this country.
And they would have fought it in the courts. Would have been. But okay, hang on. Here's what I'm saying. Here's what I'm saying, Byron. You are right. You're absolutely right, and it doesn't matter. You're telling the truth, and it doesn't matter.
But at this point, it does matter, because now we're thrown into a chaotic situation.
What I'm saying is,
constitutional
when
crisis.
The Republican Party, hang on, Byron, share the space now. When the Republican Party decides to get behind someone, they all line up. You had one guy call a man's wife ugly. You had another guy calling the guy who is now his boss Hitler. They get in line. Like, you're looking at this as Trump, but that's the low rung of how to have a conversation. People, the next rung is events. The final and highest rung are ideals. And what I'm telling you is that people throw your information as truthful and right as it is right out the window. And I don't think Democrats have actually paid attention to that as closely as they should have. They're worrying about perception of their voters. Why did Biden do it? Because it would look bad. They're playing a totally different game than Democrats are.
Hold on. Look bad versus look bad. Hold on. Looking is a perception. Following the law is more than perception. Do you know that the rule of law, 90% of it is the actual execution of it?
You are giving me more facts that are true.
Hold
Oh,
on.
hang
10%,
on, hang on. Hold on. Gotta allow me the
10% of
space to
it.
rebut. Hang on.
10, hold on.
Hang on. No, 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 no.
I,
What I'm saying is, here's what I'm saying. You're right. You're gonna give me more facts. They're going to be true, and I'm telling you, they won't matter to these people. Even if Trump was not allowed, from prison, he goes, support my best friend, Vivek Ramaswamy. It doesn't matter. They're interchangeable. This system, this monster is way past where the Democrats are willing to go.
Jay
And I'm
Zeller.
saying until we learn that, nothing's going to change.
Jay Zeller. Vivek Ramaswamy would have been in jail. You see, what I'm saying is the execution of all of that. No, hold on. Because
Tucker Carlson,
it don't matter. In 1862, the same argument was presented in Congress. I'm just giving you facts in history. I'm a historian.
And I'm telling you, here's what I'm telling you.
And here's the reason why we're in the condition that we're in right now. Because
we asked a question. Hang on there. Audience can't see or hear you. Take a moment. Take a moment. No one can hear or see you. Take a moment. You asked me the question, why would these people vote for Trump? It's not based on the fact that he actually is hurting them, his own base. Something has captured them. That's the thing I want to talk about. Everything you're saying, I agree with. Everything you're saying is right and true. And I'm telling you, they could have ran anybody because that entire machine would have gotten behind them. And then everybody who was in prison would have been cheering from prison and saying, look what they want to do to you. You got to stop this. Get out and vote. And then whomever, I mean, it could have been a gas attendant from daggum Columbia, Tennessee. It wouldn't have mattered who they put in there because the entire machine is money, power, and resources. They all get in line. While the Democrats fight each other to try to seem like the most righteous government agent, they all get in line no matter what. Every single one. From Roger Ailes and the Fox News local news to the Washington Post, now owned by Jeff Bezos, to daggum Twitter, now X, owned by Elon Musk. Everybody gets in line. One unifying message. Right into hell. But it's still one cohesive, unifying message that makes people feel like they're a part of something great. It's no difference than cigarettes telling you, hey, you will most likely get cancer by smoking meat. Right there on the package. This will, not it might, it could, this will increase the likelihood of you getting cancer. But how do you get people past that packaging? Well, it's good marketing. I'm going to put it in movies very quietly and show cool people smoking. I'm going to make a camel, an animated character, and show how awesome he is. I'm going to show the men who are smoking getting the ladies. And I'm going to show the ladies who are smoking getting the rich men and looking thin. None of that matters. Every single one of them are going to increase the likelihood of them getting cancer. But something captures them to say, smoke it anyway. You'll look cool, kid. And this is what I'm saying with the Republican Party and the people who would dare to vote for Trump. They pitch them, not just a person, not just these events. These are all fodder in the road that leads up to the idea that these people over here look down and spit on you, and it's your country. They're taking your country. Fight to get it back. And they follow through. They're not having tea with these people. Trump didn't even show up to Biden's inauguration. Why? Because he knew the perception of it. I want y'all to believe when I say I don't frap with them. Even though it's not true. They all eat dinner. They all cut from the same pie. They're all being paid by corporations.
So I come back and I ask you the question again. So they vote to overturn the 14th Amendment and put you back in slavery. You're going to walk willy-nilly right into the vortex of being treated like a slave again? Because that is hold on. Because in the question that you just posed of why they did vote, I'm saying to you as an African American, because we're coming this close. They only need 24 states, 2/3, to go to a constitutional amendment and call the Constitution, and they're going to reverse the 14th Amendment with all the things that are against us, and then vote to engage taking it out to then put you back into slavery. You're telling me that you're going to be okay with that because you believe in the ideal of one man, one vote when you know they stole the election, you know they gerrymandered the election, but you're going to tell me that as a rationale for the same side that you just gave me for those people who were oppressed, because at the point at which I'm just saying to you, they don't treat them, theirs, like they treat us. And at that, and if we are under the protection of the so-called ideal, that we're this close to being revoked of the privilege of being a first-class citizen, because 2025, the project itself, is about reversing all of that to go back to the moment that when they lost the Civil War, to declare that they won it. That's all I'm saying. So at the point at which we either going to be a democratic country that uses the rule of law and law and order to implement it fairly, because if you're not going to do that, you know, and I know why the civil rights movement failed to this point. COINTELPRO, same Justice Department that they want to put Cash Patel in, the J. Edgar Hoover of the 21st century. Okay, so it's like, I'm going to hear what you got to say, but I'm going to respectfully disagree with you, because at the point at which I am not giving anything to that other side for their rationale to
disagree with what? I would very much like you to. No. Wait. I want you to tell me exactly. Wait, tell me exactly what you disagree with, because what I'm saying is, hear me well. Hang on. Hear me well. I'm saying you are right. I'm saying you're telling the truth. And I'm also saying they don't care. And what you're telling me, if you're telling me that they stole my vote somehow, that means that the other side that's supposed to be looking out for us, the Democratic Party.
I'm not talking about
that means they're. I'm saying
I'm talking about the document that we're supposed to all
I'm not
be
talking
under.
about that.
Well, I'm not talking about that. You're talking about the party now. I'm talking about the rule that we're supposed to be guided by.
Byron, if you're saying that rule, that's a piece of paper, Byron. And you said supposed to be guided by. That thing used to
that. This is a piece of paper. This is a piece of paper. I can wipe my butt with it, blow my nose with it. It is still going to be a piece of paper. But if I'm adhering to why it is what's called toilet paper or tissue, to kind of catch my snot and clean me, then fine. It is using it as it's supposed to be used. But then if it's anything but that, you're going to tell me now that's more important than my rights, because you on the other side feel it's like, no, wait a minute. It's not your right to have that right, because I'm the one that's supposed to be giving you that right. I don't need.
I'm telling you that all of these things are made up.
Well,
that's what I mean by that. All of these things are made up.
As much as they may be made up, we are either going to live by that, because there's no way this country will sustain itself playing both sides against the
Wake up to the fact that these people are living by their own rules. They've stopped playing by those rules a long time ago. Even when they wrote those dadgum rules, they did not have us did not have us in mind, and then we had to amend it to include us.
Okay, so now what are you going to do?
To you. So we'll do it like this, one at a time. Here's what I'm saying to you. Okay? One at a time.
All right.
What I'm saying to you is that literally it doesn't matter unless we all agree that it matters. And there is a madman, more so a company, a machine behind a madman, who got half of the country to agree that that thing doesn't matter. Their version of the thing matters. And I'm telling Democrats, I'm telling all of my Democrat people to wake up to the fact that they're not playing by your rules anymore. They're not gonna glad hand and pretend and care about perception as much. He just took he spent a year and a half with a bunch of construction workers and dadgum maids and blue collar people and coal miners and police officers and firefighters behind him for a year and a half. When it came time for him to actually receive the power, right there in the front row of the dais, 30% of the world's wealth. He's not playing by our rules anymore. So
So the
while
question
Biden
is,
could have done better and could have arrested those people to prevent that, he was playing by that old rule of, well, it's unsportsmanlike. But that gummit, this guy over here has got a sledgehammer in a boxing match.
so here's the question for you as a
Please,
leader. What are
as a
you
leader.
going to do to combat the stuff that's being thrown at us right now? Because we can have this
Discuss
conversation.
ideas.
Discussing an idea is like
and then implement them.
It's like Trump saying to you, I've got a concept. Discussion is
discussing idea. If you want specifics, I can give
no,
them to
no,
you
no,
if you give me
no.
the space.
I'm going to give you the space because I'm going to ask you the question, because this is the question. I don't care about what they're doing. I'm at the point of which I don't even care what, you know, you got a spill on aisle 10, clean up your own spill, because I'm not your Negro. I don't do janitorial work. So I'm going to ask you on this platform, why you're doing urban academia, because it's not just about talk. Because if it's just about talk, then we're not leading anybody anywhere but in between the ears. What are we going to do? You are leader. You are now anointed as the leader. Give me your plan to lead us out of this morass, because that's what we're all waiting for, is the plan. Now, I got a plan. I know you got a plan. I've talked to you. I know you got a plan. But is it worthy of the nation that we're trying to lead? Remember what my MO is, my modus operandi, because I got my plan, is about leading me and my people to freedom.
My plan is to discuss ideas with people like you and then implement them. Okay. But to be able to do that, we have to get certain things straight. Because if I'm going to play a basketball game and some guy brings, it's supposed to be 5-on-5, and this guy's got 5 extra players, I've got to look at, hey, ref, why aren't you blowing your whistle? Why aren't you getting this under control? And then you find out the ref is a fan of the other team. So what is one of my plans? Build my personal wealth. To pass down the information to my children. To make sure I bring as many people with me as possible who are willing to listen and learn from how they do things and do it in a more morally God-fearing way. Yeah, I would love to save every single planet, all 8 billion plus of us. But the reality is, scripturally, it's not going to happen. So what am I going to do? I'm going to keep having conversations with as many people as possible, no matter their background, where they come from. And I'm going to try to change the hearts of people so they will know how to ask the right questions and pay attention to the right things. I'm going to teach. I'm going to lead by example, and I'm going to try to build my own gymnasium so I can properly play basketball without worrying about that team that's trying to do 10-on-5. That's my plan.
Okay. I'm going to challenge you to expand your plan to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, shelter the homeless, heal the sick, give hope to the hopeless, and protect the planet we're on. Because at the top of your plan was build my wealth. And I'm going to tell you
that was not the top of the plan.
No, you just started with that.
You'll see it on the. You'll see that. You'll see that. Like everything in place.
I trust you.
The living reality. No. I'm saying, right. You're talking about the first thing. I already said, great people, great minds, they discuss ideas. Right?
Okay. All right.
And literally feeding the hungry is going to pay me. Clothing the naked, sheltering, like the 6 are all incorporated. I literally was thinking about running for president. Of course, I could never do it because my wife would never subject this family to that sort of media scrutiny. Willing to be laughed at, willing to be looked down upon, and who does this guy think he is? Just to get the ideas out there and to build a hive mind of higher plane thinkers. And that's what I'm trying to build on this show. And just one more moment. When I tell you my platform of 7 things really do align with what you talk about with the 6 core principles of a good leader. which is food, water, shelter. We have to survive. Transportation, education, healthcare.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
As well as security.
Yes.
Hello there, Mrs.
She can't hear you because she doesn't have the headset, so. But yes,
okay. Well, tell her I
she
said hello.
She says hello. She says
so
hello.
this is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying, because we have to live in reality, not by what we hope or would like things to be. Know how they are, and I'm telling you, you have one side who is willing to just subvert all rules of thumb, all laws, all of these, these little principles, a lot of the things that once we have a peaceful transfer of power that happened are just tradition. They aren't law. And Trump exposed that because he says, I ain't doing it. Well, you're supposed to write a little letter and leave it in the thing. Nope. You're supposed to go to the inauguration. Nuh-uh. Because he's a toddler. But what I'm saying is 4 short years later, he dadgum ended right back in the position of power. And now he knows how to use it and wield it for his own personal gain better. And the only combat we can do to stop that is unity. But we need the education. We need the resources. We need the energy. And that will get those 6 core principles taken care of. But when I talk about you talk about the Constitution, I'm talking about God's word.
Oh, okay, because I want to come back to the spiritual journey, because remember that whole concept is about the birth of a homeless, holy child who was an immigrant, who was racially profiled, who escaped for 12 years, got knowledge, saw things, experienced things, came back, challenged it to the point where he threw the money changers out of the sanctuary. And that's when they said, you got to go. You taking the wealth out of the temple, because that's what we were doing. And then come back to, let's go to Gethsemane, where he was in prayer. And according to the written word, because we're going to go by that book, when the centurion's ear was chopped off, what did he say? If you live by the sword, you will die by the sword. Absolutely. Most people have forgotten that concept, because in those 10 commandments, the 6th one is thou shalt not kill. So at the point at which, now let's come to 21st century. Let's go to Palestine right now. Of those 10 core principles that they claim to go by, you're wiping out an entire race of people. Under what guidance? What book are you relatively following? If that's your Torah is supposed to be your guiding principles of your moral life. I mean, let's face it, they're killing their own Semitic cousins. There's no anti-Semitism in that space. They're all Semites. I see, as a person of color, because I have to challenge now, from what tribe did you come from? We all know, you know this as an intellectual and a historian, the last tribe of Judah is Rastaman himself, Haile Selassie. We know what tribe he came from, but I want to know, what are the 12 tribes that these others come from? Because if they're claiming to be of the 12 tribes, I'm telling you now, they're not Hebrew, they are Jewish. And that's another whole, because we got to go back to, if we're going back to our spiritual journey, because I'm agreeing with you on that.
Listen,
but the basic line is that, once again, we got to come back to a principle that if you're not going to follow that principle, then somewhere along the line, the disconnect is you don't believe in the principle.
Here's what I'm saying. We got to come back to this. Will you agree to come back same time next week?
Oh, yeah. Come on. Bring me on back. I can talk about this all day
because
long.
Here's what I'm going to say about the last statement you said is I'm going to use some hyperbolic language. So bear with me. You ready?
Go for it.
It doesn't matter. Do you accept Christ in your heart as God's only begotten son is the only way to get to the Father? That is what gets you in. I don't care about bloodlines anymore. I don't care about what they say a Christian looks like or what they say a Jew looks like. Here's what I'm going to say. The Bible says you can tell a tree by the fruit that it bears.
Amen.
If it doesn't exhibit those 6 core principles or the 7 that I talked about, then it's very obvious what you are, despite what you title yourself. And what I'm saying about these so-called Democrats, which is, look, only thing I could do is go from Democrat to independent. And I still voted D all the way down. But I just felt I got to do something. I have to do something. Because you're right. If he really thought that Trump was Hitler, a fascist, threat to democracy, he would have thrown him in jail like the Supreme Court gave him the authority to.
Yeah.
But why didn't he? Because they are eating from the same dadgum slice of pie. Join me next week.
Yeah.
Join us next week as we continue this conversation. I see. All right.
So
next
we have
week.
these
Don't
conversations.
go anywhere. Don't go anywhere.
Okay.
Next week.
Oh.
For you. For you. For you. I can't wait no more. I'm in a vintage David Ruffin limelight to stay in the